to Bibbidi Bobbidi Murder. I am your host, Debbie, and I am with my co host.
Hey everyone, my name is Amy.
And it's super exciting because this is our very first episode of the podcast, but it's also our first episode of our season one, The American Dream. Is it murder?
Yeah, this is totally the first time and not the 30th time we have recorded this one.
Stupid computers. But, anyways, this is going to be super exciting. We're going to talk about murders in each of our 50 states beginning now. So, let's talk murder. So, to start off, we are going to start in Indiana. To be specific, we're going to talk about Delphi, Indiana, which is mainly your small town America. The population in Delphi is about 2,900 people, and it doesn't have a lot to do, just mainly hiking trails, and it's known for its views.
So, me and Debbie are also from small towns, and so 2,900 even my town had more than 2,900, I'm pretty sure. But to put that in perspective, most like arenas have more than 2,900 people. Like if you go to any show at like a good sized arena, it's going to have more than that. So, that's kind of a good way to look at it.
Super small, tight knit community, and a crime of this magnitude just kind of shook it to its complete core. And that's where we're going to start. Our two victims are Abigail Williams and Liberty German. Abigail is 13 and Liberty is 14, and the girls attend the Delphi Community Middle School. So, to start off with, it's February 13th, 2017. The girls are actually out of school due to a makeup snow day. If you're not from an area that gets a lot of snow, a makeup snow day is usually a day that the board or education system sets aside for snow so that you don't have to make up days during the summer. Well, this winter was super mild. They hadn't missed a lot of days. So this day was just kind of a day they got free. And the weather was super warm. So the girls kind of had wanted to go hiking and they asked Liberty's grandmother if they could go. And she told them that they could if they could find a ride. So around 1:30, Libby and Abby were dropped off by Libby's sister near the trailhead of Mononon High Bridge, which was a very popular area for like teenagers and hikers. It was just like one of those areas that everybody went to hang out. So the sister states that she watched as the girls entered the trail and then she headed off to her boyfriend's house. They had already kind of prearranged for Libby's dad to pick them up. He was working in a nearby town, and I told the girls he would contact them when he finished and was on his way. And so no one really kind of worried about them between those time frames. And then around 2:07 p.m., Libby posts a picture on her Snapchat, and it's a picture of Abby, and she's walking across this old railroad bridge known as the Mononon High Bridge. And this was the last time that we kind of heard from the girls. And around 3 p.m., Libby's father calls to say he's on his way and he gets no answer. He doesn't think anything of it because they're on these trails and he's like, well, I didn't tell him specifically a time. I'll call him when I get there. So he arrives at the trailhead and finds that the girls aren't really there. So he tries to call him again. And once again, there's no answer. So he just decides to wait a bit and see if they show up. When they don't show up after about 30 minutes, he starts to kind of, I guess, get a little bit like any parent, like, where are they? So he kind of sets out to search for them. And he begins to search these trails alone for about 30 minutes to an hour, but can't find any sign of the girls. He starts asking trail like people on the trail if they've seen them, and no one really has. So he heads back to his car and he calls the family. He asks if they've seen the girls or maybe if the girls had showed up to any of their houses, and all of them say they hadn't heard from the girls. So at this point, it's a little bit worrisome because these are two teenage girls and no one's heard from them and they're not answering their cell phone. And so, like any parent, he knows that his daughter has her cell phone attached to her at all times. So for her not to answer, it's a little bothersome.
Most teenagers nowadays, like for me, I am like almost 30. Debbie is 30, and I forget my phone on a daily basis in weird places. Like I lose it nonstop. And but like teenagers nowadays always have their phones on them. Like it's like glued to them. So if you are completely, if you're like constantly calling and you don't either even get a text that says like, "Hey, why'd you call?" or anything like that, it slowly becomes more and more worrisome.
Right. And he knew for sure that his daughter always had her phone, and that's when the panic kind of sets in. So, as he gets in contact with the family actually starts to call the girls as well. Maybe they'll answer, and none of them get in contact with the girls either. So, they call Abigail's mom, who has been at work this whole time, and ask her if she's seen the girls or heard from them. And she states that she has not. And that's when the rest of the family decide they're going to come out to the trails and they're going to help look for these girls. So the family takes a few different paths. Some of them take paths that the girls could have possibly, if they've left the trails and started walking home, they take those paths. A lot of them took a different trails than the dad had taken, and they're continuously calling these girls and still getting no answers. And it's around like 4:30, 5 o'clock at this point, and Libby's sister and her boyfriend have seen the Snapchat of these girls on the Monano High Bridge, and that's where they decide they're gonna go look. So, Libby's sister spends about 30 minutes yelling on this bridge and repeatedly calling Liberty's phone to see if she can get an answer or even hear the ringing or get any idea as to where these girls have been, and she just has no luck. So at this point, all of the family is freaking out. Like they can't find them. They think they're lost, and
Like you have to put yourself in the like perspective of this family. Like if you're a parent, I'm personally not, but I kind of think in the views of like if something were to happen to my nephews or my little cousins, like I would be in full blown panic mode. So
absolutely.
you have to put yourself in their shoes and like understand that amount of panic going through them.
Yeah, so at 5:30, the panic is full on set. They contact the sheriff's department, and the department sends out some men to start canvassing the area. And throughout the night, they're trying to ping the girls' cell phones, and the sheriff just says that he believes their phones are either dead or turned off, which for teenagers doesn't happen. Um, they very rarely, any teenager I know very rarely lets their phone die, let alone on a trail at night. And they just keep searching for these girls for about 6 hours. And then at 11:45, officials actually call off the search because it's getting dark and they're worried about the safety of the volunteers. However, like I said before, it's a tight knit community, and a lot of the members of the community, some volunteers and family members, decide they're going to stay and they're going to keep searching for these girls. And the news stations have even got involved at this point because it's a big story. Two girls are missing on a hiking trail, and the sheriff even tells the news stations at this point that the girls are in no imminent danger, and he's just worried about the weather and if they've fallen and gotten hurt. And so that kind of leads us into the next day. Just if like a lot of people are continuing the search, but at 10 a.m., they bring back in the official search people. So you've got your volunteer fire department, you've got the police, you've got canine dogs, you've got helicopters all coming in to look for these girls. And sadly, around 12:45 p.m., we get the fire chief announcing that they presumably found Abby and Libby, and he states that the discovery was not good. But we know how police work and we know how officials work. They didn't announce that they had found two bodies officially until about 1:50 p.m. So the police announced the two bodies have been
Mm.
found. They don't identify either one of the bodies, and that's kind of where our details get a little hazy. And I had to kind of piece together news stories and accounts and just kind of find as many details as I could because a lot of them have not been released in any kind of form by the police. So it is announced later on that a piece of clothing was missing from one of the victims, and it appeared that the girls' bodies were moved and staged. From a volunteer's perspective, he was kind of on one side of the river, and to set the scene, the river is just like a free flowing river. It goes underneath the Mononon High Bridge, and there will be a map up so you guys can kind of get a feel of that. But if you can just imagine like a river, but there's like the shallow part of the river where you can kind of cross and walk across. There's no current. It's very shallow, maybe comes up to like your knees if you're like a shorter person. So one of the volunteers is looking and he thinks he sees something moving and he thought it might have been a deer. He looked up and he sees something that looks vaguely familiar to what was described by being seen what the girls were wearing. So his search crew goes over and they discover that it's actually the bodies of the two girls. Um, in this, they say there's no visible signs of struggle or fight. That in the agents say that there maybe have been a souvenir taken from the bodies, and they say there's fibers and unidentified hair was found. So to me,
So I was just gonna say, a lot of murders, they'll take a souvenir of like what happened, and it's just a weird, sick and twisted thing that a lot of people do. You'll hear it a lot in like serial killers and stuff. They'll take basically like this random souvenir, and it's almost like a prize to a lot of them, which is super super gross in my opinion. Um,
yeah,
but I just
it,
wanted to explain what she meant by souvenirs.
yeah, and it helps as thick as this sounds, it helps them relive the crime. And so a lot of the times it'll be pictures and stuff. And from context clues, I'm guessing that the bodies were staged in a manner that the officials thought that whoever had done it had taken pictures as theirs, which is just when we get to the opinion part of this section, I have a lot on that. But for now, we know there was fibers and unidentified hair at the crime scene. So all of this happened on February 14th, and then on February 15th, the authorities positively state that the bodies are that of Abigail Williams and Liberty German. And then about 5 or 6 hours after they announced that, the police released a photo of a man that was believed to be in the area at the same time of the girls. This man becomes known as Bridge Guy, and Bridge Guy at this point was not a suspect. They just want to ask him questions and get information from him, and they make it very known that this guy is not a suspect, just wanted for questioning. And that's kind of where they leave it for a couple of days while the families mourn and go through the process of burying the girls and getting all of that taken care of. On February 17th, they state that the manhunt for the killer has began and they are searching for anyone that has any information. They asked people that were on the trails, people that might have seen the girls, anything suspicious that day to come forward. And some tips start flooding in, but not enough to do anything. Um, and then on the 19th, which is about a week after the killing, the man in the photo, Bridge Guy, is officially named a suspect. So they state that someone out there knows this man. that he's wanted for a double homicide, and they beg people to come forward with information. But once again, like, it's a small community. How you don't know this man, I'm unaware, but they don't really get much.
And in a lot of small communities, like especially as tight knit as and small as Delphi is, um, somebody's got to know this guy, and I'm sure that's what's going through the police officer's mind at this time. Also, is somebody's got to know him. Either he was there and somebody saw him and was like, oh, I don't know this dude, and we're like kind of wary of him in general, or somebody just generally knows this man, like he's their neighbor, he's their friend, he goes to their church, like stuff like that. That's what you see a lot in these small town cases.
And they expected a lot more information to come from that, but it didn't. So on February 22nd, they release a little bit more information. They release an audio recording. It's a very short snip of a recording, and later on we learned like the clip was a lot longer and they just kind of gave us little details. And the clip that they released, all it states is down the hill. And to me, it's a very authoritative voice, and he literally just says down the hill. And they announced that this video and this photo were captured by Liberty German on her cell phone. So it's just astounding to me that a 14-year-old girl that most likely knew what was about to happen had the thought process to capture, first of all, a suspect and his voice on her phone. And you know she was scared out of her mind. Like, nothing good comes to your mind when a man is telling you to go down a hill that you don't know, especially at that age. You're always warned of stranger danger. You're worried, like, you hear the stories. And for a 14-year-old to have to endure this, and I mean, a 13-year-old, even younger, like, it's just very saddening. So, it days pass, and the reward for any information on this is outstanding. Like, the community pitches in, like, professional athletes are pitching in money, and the reward at this point on March 1st of 2017, the reward is up to $200,000 for any information leading to an arrest. Um, and the FBI has got more than 11,000 tips that they're having to go through. And yet, I just kind of like am shocked by this is such like anytime something bad happens, people you see the best in people, but this community really just wanted answers. Like they no one wants to think their neighbor or anyone that they know is capable of this. And in this community, everybody knew everyone. So for them to not have answers must have been absolutely terrifying to think that your neighbor might be a killer.
And I would like to say, like, a lot of these cases, like, money talks, but it also brings in a lot of like false tips, or like not even false tips, but like tips that like are just dead ends. But money talks. I was saying earlier, um, if one of my friends committed a crime and there was a reward out for $200,000, I don't know how loyal I would be to that friend anymore, because like that's a lot of money.
Absolutely. I'm like, I probably wouldn't be very loyal. Actually, I would be less loyal for half of that money. Like, you do bad things, you deserve bad things. I didn't do anything bad. Why can't I do good things?
Like Debbie knows me. I am loyal to a fault. Like I will be loyal to someone for way longer than I should be loyal to. She has seen me do this numerous times, but never have I had to cover up a murder for them. So I guess I don't know what I would do in that situation, but I feel like if I wasn't tempted to rat them out before, when money starts getting involved and gets up to $200,000 plus, I start questioning my loyalties at some point.
Right. And I mean, like, to think that someone killed someone and no one's given information for that kind of money, I'm like, that kind of loyalty, if people had that loyalty, there would be a lot less divorces. I'm just saying. Um, so Amy said tips are flooding in, and the FBI has got more than 11,000 tips. So at this point, they're having to search through these and trudge through these. And on March 16th, federal and state authorities execute a search warrant on the property of Ron Logan. Now, Ron Logan is a creepy man, and he actually owns the property at which the girls' bodies were actually found on. It's a large piece of property. It's kind of one of those things that I got two different sides of the story. Some sources say that it was a normal part of the investigation because that's where the bodies were found, like people searched that. But then a lot of other ones kind of stated a few more facts that I kind of tend to lean with. So just know that there are two sides of it, that it might just been a normal part of the investigation. But I'm gonna go with Ron Logan was a shady man. So he owns this large piece of land, and the police start to question him, and a few details come out about Mr. Logan. So Mr. Logan is at this point he is 77 years old. So a little older than what I would think a murderer would be, but what do I know? And he he's a very from what the police description states, he's very well he gets around very well. He's healthy, and he goes he goes into detail on a news show about his land and where the girls were found, and it kind of throws up the first red flag for me, but I'll let you guys form your own opinion. So, Logan states in his interview that the area where the body was found is very hard to get to. His exact words were, "You can't get there unless you walk." And somebody had to be walking with them or something. End quote. So, take that as you will. But Mr. Logan definitely knew that this was not an area that people would just casually stumble upon. And police note that Mr. Logan was able to get to the area on his own volition when they interviewed him. So he like came down to this area and had no problem doing so. So that's kind of the first red flag that throws it up to police. And the next thing that the police say is that they state Ron Logan's voice is not inconsistent with that of the voice on German's phone.
That's like a weird way to word that. Like it's not inconsistent, but does that mean it's consistent?
I don't know.
Like that's just
It's
a
not
weird way.
inconsistent.
It's That's just a weird way to word that. Like it's not inconsistent. Like okay, can you explain that? Like I know that you can't, but like can they explain that say a little bit more? Because I see sayings like that all the time when doing this research, and I'm like, okay, so is it him? And then they're like, well, it's not inconsistent, and then they just move on, and it's like a weird way to put that. And I know they can't give that much info, but like, can you help out a little bit?
I mean, like, my thing with that is they're not giving much info at all. Like in this case, they have released a tiny portion of information when they're asking the community for so much help. And if there's any mistake I think they made, I think it was that. I think they didn't give enough details that somebody would think my neighbor done this. And I could be wrong on that, but it's kind of like what I've leaned towards this whole case is like, how would I point someone that I've known my whole life as a killer when I have a blurry picture and 2 seconds of talking? And I I don't know if you can. Even worth that money, like who would want to name their neighbor as a murderer and turns out they're not? Like that could ruin someone's life. So I think that was kind of a mistake on the authorities' part is I don't think they wanted to keep everything so private, but at the same time, they needed the public's help. So They do say that the voice was not inconsistent, but they also state that text messages sent to and from Logan's phone pin Logan in the proximity of the location where the bodies were found. So, like I said before, he does have a large land, but his phone is saying that he's in this area, the exact location of the body. So, I'm 1,000% sure if you could just walk over and not see two bodies laying there, or if you wouldn't see someone moving bodies or something, but it's kind of sussy to me, like, little sus. Um, there there is a note that Logan was arrested, but it wasn't anything to do to tie him to these crimes. Mainly he was arrested because, like I said before, he was a felon, due to previous crimes that he had committed. And when they were searching his place, they found multiple handguns and knives on the property. So they did make arrest on that, but he was never tied to the murders of Abigail Williams and Liberty German, and he was never officially named a suspect. And then in 2020, Logan just dies. So we don't really have anything else to follow up on, and that's kind of where Ron Logan, I mean, he really does end, but like story of Ron Logan ends there.
The only way at this point we'll be able to ever pin anything on Ron Logan is if like the DNA that's under the girl's fingernails somehow points us back to Ron Logan. But as of right now, like there's nothing to pin him at all.
Right? It's kind of just like one of those things that I guess was just a dead end. And like I said, there's not a lot released by officials stating whether why they thought Ron Logan or why they searched this area or if it was just a normal part of the investigation. So that's a kind of another thing I want to look for in the trial is just like what led them down this path and what clue or tip did they get. But that was in March of 2017, and then months go by, April, May, June, nothing is done. It's just mainly the family making awareness of it and just kind of trying to get information. And the police are working on it and they really have high hopes about this. But once again, it's a small town and like if people aren't giving you information or you've got so many leads that you're having to work through, it's going to take some time. And so that's kind of what we see here. So in July 17th of 2017, investigators finally release a composite sketch of the suspect. Now, this is another one of those things that has a big question mark over it because when I say they release a composite sketch, this is one of two composite sketches that they release, and this is the very first one. We'll talk about the second one and everything a little bit later, but just know that this is the first composite sketch of two. And they say that this sketch is released after interviewing witnesses on the trail the day of the murder. So this is the man that these witnesses say they've seen that resembles Bridge Guy as closely as possible. So once again, a few months go by, and on September 28th, Colorado authorities reach out to the Indiana officials about a man named Daniel Nations. Now, like I said before, this case was great magnitude. It got nationwide coverage from major news channels because this is a crazy crime to happen anywhere, let alone like small town America. So Colorado calls Indiana up and is like, "Hey, we have this guy. His name is Daniel Nations. He lived in Indiana at the time of these crime, and he was arrested on one of our trails because he attacked someone with a hatchet." So they kind of see the similarities in what happened in Delphi and what happened on their trails, and they think maybe this could help Indiana out. So the next day, Indiana officials fly out to Colorado and they interview Daniel Nations, but sadly, they say once again, it's there's no connection. They don't think there's any reason to believe that he had anything to do with it. And so that's kind of where that ends for a few months. February 14th, 2018, it's been a whole year since the the day the bodies were found. At this point, the FBI received over 30,000 tips. And now the reward is up to $240,000, which is crazy to me. Like, that nothing has been of substantial evidence that this reward is still getting bigger because of community donations and everything like that. People Authorities have interviewed over thousands of witnesses. I'm talking like they've spent a whole year just interviewing people and following leads. And I mean, it's led to arrest, but nothing to do with the Delphi case. It's more they've arrested up to 24 people based on just unrelated tips that they're getting, trying to connect people. People are turning in neighbors for stuff and been like, "Oh, this person done this. Maybe they're a killer." And the police are arresting people, but not in connection with Abigail Williams and Liberty German. So 2018 comes and goes. Still no answers are found. And then on February 13th, 2019, it's been 2 years. The police hold a press conference to just remind the public of the case and hopefully generate more information, get a tip or something that could help break this case open. It doesn't seem to work, but then April 22nd, 2019, they hold another press conference to announce that they have a significant update on the case. At that point, they are once again given very little details, but they do release the second composite sketch. And this is another one of those things on this case that I put a huge question mark on, because this sketch, I will put them on our social media. These sketches side by side are two different people. They're not the same. They look nothing alike. They don't even look like they could be related. And
Like, so I was looking at these sketch because me and Debbie, we share like pictures of the information like day of, because we don't really look into the other person's cases because we don't want to ruin it for ourselves and like the shock factor for ourselves. But we do get pictures sent to us day of, and sometimes some notes for us to like glance at while we're going through in case I get lost, because I will. And these pictures look, they have 0% amount in common. Like, the first sketch kind of looks like a basic white dad, and I don't mean that offensively. I just mean like that's the best way to describe that picture to me. And the second picture kind of looks like the bro that lives in like the apartment down from me. Like, they're nothing alike.
like, and I'm not even talking they have similarities. So looking at both of these composite sketches, you're like, are they different people? Are we looking for a different man? And once again, I think this is another thing that should have been explained a little bit more to the public. Like, why did the composite sketch change so much? And all they say is new information. So no one really has any idea. But along with this composite sketch, they do release a longer version of the audio clip. And this is where we realize that the audio clip that was taken from Liberty German's phone is actually 43 seconds long. We don't get all 43 seconds, but we do get a little bit longer of a version of it. And it goes from saying down the hill, and it says like there's like a wind or something you can kind of hear, like just static, and it says guys down the hill. And I have listened to this soundtrack 500 times. I think soundtrack is a terrible word to put there, but like this audio clip is what I'm going to call it. Three 300 times at least. And it is just I've read comments on it. I've seen people break it down and say that they hear on the audio clip one of the girls say he has a gun. And I can hear it for the first few times, but after I listen to it so much, I don't know if it's that one of the girls saying it or if it's just like an a wind and I'm looking for something to hear, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, the thing is that when they release these audio clips and people start saying they hear things, they are gonna make other people hear it because that's what people are looking for. And if you're looking for something in an audio clip, um, like this has been seen so many times when people have posted clips of words and different people hear different words. If you're looking for a specific phrase in it, you're gonna hear it. And that's kind of it makes audio clips slightly more. I don't want to say in like uncredited, uncredible. I don't think that's not the word I wanted, but like not as credible. But it kind of does because if you were to bring this up in court and you played it the first time and you did not tell people what they hear, then they might not hear it. But if you play it again and say, "Did you hear them say this or did they say this?" Suddenly, jury, audience members, the media, everybody suddenly starts hearing that.
Yeah, and, like, listening to it so many times, I don't know if I just kind of became immune to it because if it was heard, it's, like, just a vague little snip of it, and according to, like, people for him not to see her phone, she probably had it in her pocket and was recording the voice, and, like, once again, there's not a lot of information released on this, but if it was in her pocket, it could have been a muffled talking, but I don't understand how I would have heard the the suspect so loudly unless they were whispering, which they could have been because they were scared, you know? It's just a lot of questions on that, and for us, I don't know what's on the other parts of it because I'm talking like it's 43 seconds long and we probably have 8 seconds of it, so there could be more that led them to the decisions that they made, and maybe it was out of protection for the family. I don't know. But that's released, and they think with releasing this information that it's gonna generate more tips, which it does. There's tips that come in, but nothing. And 2020 comes, 2021 comes, and almost goes by, and there's no new leads, no new tips that have led to suspects. The family has went on Nancy Grace, they've went on Dr. Oz twice. They're trying to get as much attention. They're desperate for answers. I mean, they lost 2 little girls and they're just trying to just do their best to maybe find who done this and just get a little justice. I mean, they posted do you know, like, in Walmart, I don't know if this is every time, but they have, like, the missing children or Have You Seen Me posters everywhere. They had Bridge Guy on 48 of the 50 states billboards like that, and still nothing. Like, I can't imagine the pain and desperation that they are feeling at this moment when years are going by. In this case, it's almost cold. Like, police are saying it's not, but 2 years have gone by, and it's December 6th, 2021, and for the first time since April of 2019, the police ask for information from the public once again, and they ask for information based on an Instagram profile called Anthony_shots, and they say that this Instagram profile has connection with the Delphi murders. It turns out that this account was fake and had communicated with Germans shortly before the killings took place. And this is kind of where things get a little bit disturbing. This account was linked back to a man named Keegan Klein. Keegan Klein is 30 years old. He lives with his father, and that's all we're going to talk about Keegan because he is disgusting. He's a terrible man, and he is what we call a chum bucket on this podcast.
Yeah, future reference, anytime we're talking about any kind of sex offender or child predator, they will be called chum bucket. and they are the absolute scum of the earth, and we hate them.
Tom Bucket lived 30 minutes away and was a suspect in a child porn case. He was arrested and charged with 35 counts of child pornography and related crimes. And for the majority of 2022, it the whole Delphi case kind of revolves around this chum bucket. And nothing really happens. We don't see any kind of action taking place until October of 2022. And now on October 4th, 2022, they search a river near Klein's home. They don't announce why they're searching this river. They don't even state if it's related to Abigail Williams and Liberty German, but they do. It's spotted on news cameras. I want to say that a news camera kind of caught it and pieced it together and put it back towards the Delphi murders. And then something crazy happens on October 26th, 2022. 2 days after they search the river, authorities arrest 50-year-old Richard Allen of Delphi, and he is formally charged with 2 counts of felony murders on the 28th of October. So, if you're not familiar with true crime, or maybe you just don't have like a good definition of crimes that take place, a felony murder is a little bit different than like first degree murder, second degree. A felony murder is when you are committing a felony and you I don't even want to say accidentally, it results in murder. So you didn't start off murdering, but it led to murder. So in this case, the prosecuting attorney states that the underlying felony is actually kidnapping. So they're going to charge Richard Allen with kidnapping, and it led to murder, pretty much is what they say. So, of course, like every man who gets caught or woman that kill, like they're not going to state that they done it. So, Mr. Allen pleads not guilty at his initial hearing.
So I will say, like, in a lot of like of any kind of cases, if they don't have full evidence of them murdering, then but they have full evidence of something else. So in this case, kidnapping, presumably, um, they will charge them for that account, but not yet charge them for the murder. I actually have recently seen this in what I'm researching. But they'll charge them for like the lesser account in order to A, be able to put them behind bars, and B, also because if they were to try them for them and then them get not guilty, with double jeopardy and all, would be very hard, if not impossible, to charge them with it again if they got more evidence. So they try to avoid that in a lot of cases, um, to avoid that situation coming in.
Right. And with this initial hearing, Richard Allen's bail is set at $20 million. And Richard Allen is just a pharmacist in this town. So he probably doesn't have that kind of money, which good. But on November 22nd, 2022, a hearing is held on whether they should publicly release the probable cause affidavit. And once again, if you're familiar with true crime, you know that this probable cause affidavit is usually released publicly as soon as arrest is made. But this one was kind of held back because a lot of people um, were kind of angry that it wasn't released the day he was arrested or a couple days later. It's almost a full month before they even have a hearing whether they should release it. They were scared that it would get so much media attention that they didn't want to. So it actually goes in front of a judge. The DA is a little bit cocky and says he wants it released and that he's not impressed with the lack of evidence in the documents. And the prosecutor announced at this point that he believes there are more players involved in this crime, which once we get to our opinions, I will agree with. Um, but another thing that kind of happens on the 22nd is Alan has his his attorney ask for his bail to be lowered to a reasonable amount because once again his bail is $20 million and not many people have that kind of money.
I don't think that Richard Allen is in the position currently to negotiate his bail for murder.
Right. I'm like, what is the reasonable amount of murder bail? Like, you murder two people. What do you think your bail should be? Like, that's not what happens here, Mr. Allen.
Like, is he wanting like 10 bucks a bag of chips? Like, I what? No, it's 20 million. Deal with the consequences to your actions.
And at that point, I'm like, if your bail is $20 million, they must have some damning evidence, like there's something that leads them to believe beyond doubt that you've done this. Like they've pieced together pieces. Now, I'm once we get into like the next part of the podcast, I'll kind of go over what I think they have, but we don't have that in black and white, so I'm not going to kind of go over that in this piece. But that kind of happens, the hearing happens, and then on November 29th, 2022, the they do release the court documents, but they're redacted. And a lot of times with major cases like this that have so much media attention or that a trial is underway, they will do that to protect the witnesses so they're not bombarded with questioning or anything like that. And once these court documents are released, there is a gag order in place. And if you don't know what a gag order is, it's where anybody related to the case cannot talk. It's court ordered that they can't give any information based on the case. So the families of the victims, the police officers investigating it, the court officials, no one can give any information to the public. And that's kind of why they release these documents out. So that's when we get the probable cause affidavit. And that's where I kind of learned like a bunch of crazy things. So in this document, I'm going to go over like what was said, like what some of the witnesses say, and these are hardcore facts. This is why they arrested Richard Allen, and you can form your own opinions on this. So they released a few witness descriptions. So in 2017, the police, as I said before, were looking for anybody that seen anything on the trails. And a bunch of witnesses, of course, came forward. There is a couple of different ones that kind of like just hit me whenever I was reading this. And one of them is Mr. Allen. He is interviewed in 2017. He volunteered to be interviewed. He walked into the police station to to give information, and he describes himself as wearing a dark blue pullover, blue jeans, and boots very similar to Bridge Guy. And he goes on to state that he was on the Monano High Bridge Trail for 2 hours now, the same time as when the girls were presumably murdered, to watch fish.
I do go to trails a lot to watch fish. I'm just kidding. I don't do that. That's not a thing that a lot of people do. I will say, like, especially in like rivers like that, you can't. A lot of rivers in small towns. Coming from a small town myself, a lot of rivers in small towns, you can't see the fish very well because like the dirt and the muck and stuff like that. So I'm actually curious at this point of what kind of fish he was watching.
He did name the fish, but I didn't even care about the fish because he states that he's on the bridge to watch the fish. This bridge is so high off the ground. Like he had have binoculars, B eagle eyesight plus the binoculars and maybe some bifocals because this bridge is super high. I'm gonna post pictures of it. I will even probably post facts on it because I need you to know, to me, there is no way. Maybe he was just walking to get to a trail, like playing devil's advocate, but like Amy said, like this, like you can see pictures of the river. It's dirty. It's a very dirty river, muddy, unclear. Like I don't know what kind of fish you're looking at, sir, but they're imaginary. And but that's not even the best crazy part of this. That is Mr. Allen's statement in 2017. He practically says he's on the bridge at the same time as these girls. He's wearing the same clothes as what is pictured in that. But there's like a couple of other things that start to come out, like once it's announced that he's arrested. You know how the internet is. They can find something that his great 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 grandfather best friend's uncle done 38 years ago. You know, like crazy things that the internet does. Well, they get on Richard Allen's wife's Facebook page and they start finding things that are just like eerie. So there's a picture of Richard and his wife. We're not going to name her name. Like, she has nothing to do with this, I hope. Like, so she doesn't need to be name dropped. So she is in this picture, and in the back, I'm not for sure where they are, but there's like a cork board, and it has a sketch two, posted on it, and Richard Allen's there. And I'm talking, they look nothing alike. They look so unsimilar. Like he's sitting in the picture with this sketch, and no one makes the connection. That's one of the things. So, but if you compare Richard Allen to sketch one, they look eerily similar. They look so similar. It's kind of like somebody sat Richard Allen down and drew him. And how he went so long without being discovered is kind of a mystery to me. So, another one of those question marks. Another thing about Richard Allen that you guys should know is he's very inept at the trails. He knows those trails. Him and his wife and his daughter travel those trails quite often. There's even pictures of his daughter on the same bridge that Mr. Allen presumably took Libby and Abby on. So it's just there's too many. Oh, why was he here? Why did he admit this in 2017? And why did it take 5 years to piece him to this? I guess we'll know when things start coming out, but that is one of the main things that came out with this affidavit. Another one is another witness statement. One of the witnesses, it's a woman. They don't want her name is redacted for her protection. It states she encountered a man traveling on the road adjacent to the crime scene wearing a blue colored jacket, blue jeans, and he was muddy and bloody and appeared to have gotten in a fight. So, once again, a description that matches the clothes that Richard Allen was wearing and Bridge Guy both things, and he's bloody. He's spotted and he's gotten in a fight. And, like, if you remember back, one of the girls had DNA underneath her fingernails. So to me, I'm like, if I'm thinking of what she means by he looks like he got in a fight, I'm gonna assume he has scratches or some kind of physical damage that she thought, oh, this man had a tussle in the woods. And scratches seem to be like a good example of that. And then there's also a video. This video is of a car. One of the witnesses that were on the trail says they seen a suspicious car parked at an old Child Protective Services building that was never used. This building was closed off, and they kind of stated, like in their statement, that it was backed in a manner that was as if they were trying to conceal the license plate. This car is caught on video and it matches one of Richard Allen's vehicles that he owned in 2017. Um, so once again, another huge piece of evidence pointing to Richard Allen. But You think we're done here? Wrong. Another piece of evidence is that it is released that during the investigation, when they discovered the bodies of Abigail Williams and Liberty German, there was an unspent bullet casing found between the two girls. This bullet, after they collect evidence from Mr. Allen's house, he states that he has weapons. So they go in and they collect his guns, and of course, one of his guns matches the caliber of this bullet. So they test it, and lo and behold, it matches Richard Allen's gun. Now, I don't know about you, but if I was confronted with this kind of evidence, I would deny until I die if I wanted to be proven innocent. But Mr. Allen tells the police he has no explanation as to why this bullet was between the girls' bodies, and he also has never lent his guns out to anyone. That is kind of what we got from the probable cause affidavit, which is what I feel like a lot of information. Like, why don't you have an explanation for your bullet? Why are you um wearing the same as the suspect? And on top of that, like, you have the means possible to murder these girls and you have no explanation for any of it. So that's kind of where we're at today with this case. The jury trial is set to begin on March 20th, 2023. So just about 2 months out. And the crazy thing, I am just kind of like looking forward to seeing what information they haven't released because I feel like there's just so much of it. But that's the that's the facts, and now it's our favorite part. Let's get to the opinions.
Yeah, I have a lot about this case. Because there is a lot of information, but there's so many questions. I feel like there's more questions than like information.
I
Like
agree.
to me, it sounds like there were two people. Now, was it a dad and a bro? I don't know, but it sounds like there's two people involved at least. At least to me, I might like if you don't have the same opinion as me, that's fine. Um, and also like you were saying, like you've looked at like kind of I don't know if you said this or not. I might be lying, but like of Logan's property,
Yeah.
Ron Logan, yeah. So he, I I don't know. Part of me doesn't think he has anything to do with it, and he is just like an old man that's done some crappy things in his life. But at the same time, like he was in the area at the time. He was in that area of his property, but do you know if there were there any like woods in his property or like were they left in the woods?
It kind of says that it's a clearing, so that led me to believe like maybe there was some brush and stuff that kind of concealed the bodies because when the volunteer found the bodies, he had to go over and look to see them, but I don't think it was wooded because like from the pictures of the area, it kind of looks like brush and it was like flattened down. So I don't think it was wooded, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, cuz I mean, once again, not to play devil's advocate, but like part of me wants to say that he didn't know what was going on and he's just kind of like not even wrong place, wrong time. Like his house was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Like he lived close by to the bridge, and it was the first place that um the dude bro that did it or didn't because I mean innocent till proven guilty, so I don't want to immediately say Richard Allen did it. I mean I do want to say it, but I'm not going to. Um, but um like with that much property and that much land, like you don't know what goes on your on that area 24/7.
Right.
And don't get me
Um,
wrong, it might come out that they do know he did have something to do with it. It might come out in trial. So like don't take my word for it saying that I don't think so. Um but in my opinion, like I I know a lot of people with a ton of land, and I'm pretty convinced that somebody could hide a body on any of their yards and they would not know.
Right. Like, especially in like the the country aspect of things, like if he was on his land, he might not have been paying attention. Like, he's probably out just exploring or like walking and he might not have seen it. Um, it is kind of weird that his phone was pinging in that proximity, but that could mean anything. Like he could not have service. Like I feel like maybe there's more to it and I don't know if we'll find answers, but I really hope so, especially on the Logan aspect. But I I kind of have a theory of like what I think may have happened and why they have not released a lot of the information. I do think the crime was very gruesome, just from context clues based on like why did they think Daniel Nations was connected? Like he attacked people with a hatchet, like so that kind of leads me to believe it was a little bit more violent than what was said. And there are some text messages. I'm not going to repeat these text messages. I feel like they're harmful to the family. I don't think anyone should ever discuss stuff like that, but there are text messages released from the man um allegedly released from the man that found the bodies and he states some details in there that just like make me think that what happened to these girls is just absolutely horrendous. And I don't think there was one person that could do it. I have asked, I'm probably on a list somewhere. I've asked so many people about carrying bodies. Richard Allen on his arrest, um, on his like mugshot, it lists him as 5'4", 180 pounds. Now, Libby played softball. She was a bigger girl. Like she was taller for her age. She was 5'4", so she's the same height as this man, and she weighs 200 pounds. Her friend, Abigail, is 5'4" as well and weighs 100 pounds. To me, I don't see how one man could carry both of these bodies. Let's take Ron Logan out of the equation. Ron Logan is on his property. It's middle of the day because I don't think he done it at night. I think these girls were already killed by the time the searches had begun. And it was just too dark to see them. But I think there's a barn. Like in one of the things I read, there was a barn located above the hill. I think if anything was done, it was done there and they were moved. But to me, like I don't see how one person could carry that much dead weight by themselves up and down that hill because in the video of the man walking, it looks like he has a limp. And so that tells me that maybe there's something wrong with his leg. It could be the bridge because you walk a little different on wood planks, but I think he had help. And when I put together everything, I think it has to go back to this Anthony Shots account. I think they lured the girls there with intentions of maybe kidnapping them and doing some horrible things to these girls. And things got out of hand and it turned into murder. And to me, one person couldn't do that. They do in Keaton Klein's case, the I'm not even gonna once again, I'm not gonna call him a man. The chum bucket decided he announced that multiple people had access to this Instagram account. But me being an American with good standing, hopefully, um, I don't see how in a town of 2,900 people, two people with the same perverted views of life have found each other and are luring little girls out. But I could be wrong. You never know. Like the world's a dark place. But I do think there was more than one person involved and I think that's going to come out. I think they're waiting to break Richard Allen and hopefully they do. And all these people are put behind bars and the family gets a little bit of justice and answers that they've been looking for 5 years.
I mean, like, there's a lot of chump buckets out there, unfortunately.
But for
Um,
two to live in a small town, 2,900 people, two, what's that percentage?
there are a lot of them out there, unfortunately. And the thing is, if there are two in a town that small, they're gonna know each other.
I guess you're right.
So maybe there are multiple people on that account. But the thing is like I've had a shared Instagram before with a friend, and you can see the messages still. Like you can like Keegan could have gotten on there and seen those messages to these girls and known information.
Right, and, like, he does I wanna say he says that his father had access to the account, which his father would be closer to Richard Allen's age, so maybe there's a connection there, and they just haven't announced it, but this is also an opinion, and I didn't wanna state it before because I didn't wanna construe the facts with the opinions, or they searched Keegan Klein's river that was close to his home on the 24th. Richard Allen was arrested on the 26th, charged on the 28th, and then the following week after that, Keegan Klein seen 5 of his charges dropped. And now that could once again go back to the fact that like maybe those charges weren't strong enough to be held, or maybe those charges were just like weaker than the rest of the charges or something else. But it's a little suspicious. Like you dropped 5 charges a few days after someone's arrested. Sounds to me like maybe he gave some information that led to the arrest and that was his deal. He's not going to end up getting the reward because, oh, well, you're a chum bucket, but here, we'll release 5 of your charges and maybe you only serve 30 life sentences or whatever. So,
I'll be interested in the trial to see if anything comes out about Klein. Because honestly, if they pull him up as a witness, I'm gonna be shocked. I'm not gonna be shocked, and I am gonna be shocked at the same time. Like, I don't know if that makes any sense.
right. And there's just so much like speculation around this case. Like if you've ever lived in a small town, you're from a small town, you know that gossip travels faster than anything in those towns. Like you tell one person and 45 people will know 10 seconds later. Like it's like one of those things. And a lot of people said that Klein was actually at the site of the Monano Bridge, parked in the parking lot on the same day, same time as the murders. So they think that maybe he had seen what happened and maybe wasn't actually involved in the killing, but had seen what happened and held that information in because how do you explain, oh, I have this fake Instagram account that I'm luring children out on? There are some like gossip around the town that Keegan Klein was actually on the trailhead the day that the girls were murdered, that he messaged them on this Instagram account. He asked them to meet them there, and I'm unsure if I think that maybe him and Richard Allen and maybe his dad had a plan, or maybe like it was just his dad and them, but something kind of gives me the belief to be like, did they decide that they wanted to kidnap these girls and that was their original plan and it just got out of hand, or maybe one of them had a different plan? But he had multiple other girls on his Instagram. Like, I mean, like, enough to charge him with 30 cases. So it makes me think, did he pick these girls for a specific reason? Was it just a fluke that he was there while they were there? And or is that even true? So it just kind of like there's just so many unanswered questions, and like I will just be super glad when this case starts and we finally get some answers based on actual hardcore evidence and not just speculation.
Yeah, I'm also really interested in how this trial is going to go, and the information they have against Richard Allen, because like clearly they have enough evidence, or they believe they do, or they wouldn't be
Right.
taking it to court.
with $20 million as his bail, like, that seems like so and, like, his attorney been asked to, like, have it moved because of the attention that it's got in that area. He doesn't think there'll be a fair jury pool, which I wholeheartedly believe, and I'm just kinda curious as to where they will find people that haven't heard of this case because, I mean, it was all over the news in 2017, 2018. Anytime there was a break in the case, it was national. So, to find a jury pool is gonna be a little bit of a task, and I'm kind of curious, is it gonna be I really actually am like, hopefully it doesn't result in a mistrial, but a lot of cases like this kinda do because there is so much media attention on it, and it's hard to find people that haven't heard of it, especially now with social media the way it is. Everyone says they see a man in the trees, and, like, part of me kinda sees it, but it could also just be a shadow, and, like, I think that video kinda goes on with the question that you had earlier as to was that property wooded? I don't feel like where it was winter, there was a lot of leaf coverage and, like, foliage on there, like, I don't feel like he didn't see if there was someone on his property, I don't feel like he didn't see them if he was in that area. So, part of me is like, was there a miscommunication? Was he not in the same area? And with them saying that the bodies were staged, were they moved there, like, after maybe he left the time? Like, it's hard for me to believe that her sister was on the bridge 500 feet away from her, maybe, and screaming and yelling for her and calling her phone, and the phone not being heard or the suspect being caught in the action. Because I mean, she was there, and there's just there's just too much unanswered questions, and like I said before, I don't feel like the public has got nearly enough answers, but also, I guess that's a good thing because there are so many unanswered questions, it's hard to form an opinion on it, and it's also very hard for people to take ownership of a crime they didn't commit, and that happens a lot in big cases like this.
Yeah, a lot of cases this large have a lot of people that want to confess, which is it's a weird phenomenon to me that people are just like, I did it, and you're like, no, no, you didn't, buddy. Like, why is that a thing in these? I know they want attention, and that's a big reason, but like, there's better ways to get attention than to admit to a murder that you did not confess.
I think that's one of the main reasons they've not released what was taken from the bodies or how the bodies were found is just for the state that they wanna keep some of that to weed out false confessions, and why that is a thing, I agree, I don't understand how someone would want to spend their life in jail for something they didn't do, but each their own, I guess.
Yeah, but yeah,
Alright.
it's gonna be super interesting when it comes out, and we'll for sure be posting updates as we get them on our socials. Probably mostly TikTok because it's the easiest place to just tell stuff really quick because you can just make a video real quick. So if you're not following us on TikTok, why aren't you doing that? Do it now.
And I think that's kind of a wrap on things unless you have anything else to add.
No, I don't. I don't think that. I think that's pretty much all I got.
If you actually have any information that could lead to any assistance in this case or helping the family get answers, you can always contact the FBI and they can get you in contact with the people that are over this case because they are still doing tips and who knows, maybe you have such a small what seems like a small and insignificant detail that you've been keeping to yourself, and maybe that helps break this case wide open and put the right person behind bars. So if you have details, you can actually just dial 1-800 call FBI. It's very simple. Or if you have any other information and you don't feel comfortable doing that, um, we will gladly help you get in contact with anyone that can help you. And the good thing about this is the family has been so involved getting this shared nationally that they actually have an email address that we will post on our social media that you can actually just email tips to the people that are over this case and they will answer them. And you don't even have to pick up the phone. You can do it anonymously. This family just want answers, and I think after 5 years, they deserve them. So if there's anything you can do to help, please do so.
This family's already been through enough. Like the family of a lot of victims that we talk about, they've been through enough. There is if there's nobody that deserves justice more than some of these families that we're going to talk about. And if you can do anything at all to help them out by helping solve this, it'd be greatly appreciated by us and the family. Part of the reason we do this is to spread awareness and to spread our love to the families by getting their story out there for cases like this as much as we can.
And with that, that is a wrap. And thank you for listening to our first episode ever of Bippity Boppity Murder. And we will see you next time.
See you guys.